Hey, welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, Giallo enthusiasts. It's Tanner Leeser, your host for TheKingInGiallo, and let's do another unscripted movie review. I just finished watching The Fox with the... I just finished watching The Fox with the Velvet Tail. I don't know why, but I keep wanting to say the Fox with the Silver Tail, but that's just me being me, I guess. So, this is a 1971 Giallo that I really should have covered when I was going through 1971, but I haven't really been doing Spanish gialli, not yet. I do plan on kind of doing a whole big season of Spanish gialli, and this will fit very well in there. Although this is a Spanish-Italian co-production, but the director is Spanish. That's kind of the difference between some of the other co-production films that I have covered, is the director is usually still Italian. They just got financing in, or, they got other departments in Spain to help things out. This kind of seems like it's the opposite way, but don't quote me on that, but that's just how it kind of seems. But the director on this, and I don't want to butcher his name. I'm not the Spanish speaker in this house, but it is José María Forqué. I believe that's right. I will probably have to ask my housemate and see if I got that right. You can pick this Blu-ray up by Mondo Macabro, and it's good. It looks really good. It's a good movie, and it has a commentary track from Troy Howarth. So there's that. So I'll say one of my viewers, one of my subs turned me onto this movie because the Spanish gialli I haven't really gone down, not yet. I haven't really been searching through them, but this one came up, and I looked into it, and I saw it being, talked about as a Italian Spanish giallo, and I read about it, just a little bit about the synopsis, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a giallo. Whereas some of these other movies are kind of a little fringe, a little iffy. You're like, yeah, I guess it could kind of be. This one is pretty giallo in terms of the movies that I've watched very recently that I've been cutting reviews on. This is the most giallo one, which is funny because the other ones were all written up about by Troy Howarth in his book, but this one is more so. But then again, this one is also post 1970, post The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but it's not really one of those black glove, black coat, razor wielding, knife wielding killer giallo movies. This is the most Umberto Lenzi giallo film that he never made. He didn't make this. And it's so funny because it's like more Lenzi than some of Lenzi's other films. And I don't want to just kind of discredit its own director and be like, yeah, you just made a Lenzi giallo, that's all you did. I'm not trying to say that, but if you watch it for yourself, it's so Lenzi. And in fact, I was communicating with my friend who was one of my subs who told me about this movie, and he was asking me about some other 70s whodunit slashers besides Black Christmas and Alice Sweet Alice, and I was like, I'll have to think on that. Right now I'm watching Fox with a Velvet Tail, and he's like, it's really Lenzi, isn't it? And I'm like, dude, it is so Lenzi. That's exactly what I was thinking. So also, I didn't know that John Sorel was in this. So right when he showed up, I'm like, I mean, what more do we need? But the plot of this movie is you follow this woman, Ruth, and she tells her husband, Michel, that she wants a divorce. She's going off, on a vacation, and she's kind of trying to tiptoe around the fact that she's got another guy, and he's he figures it out. He's not an idiot. But she tells him, yeah, it's just not going to work out. And then her new boy toy, John Sorel, shows up to pick her up, and they go off and just leave the guy. And he's like, well, I like that he's very accommodating. I like that he's very discreet, I think was the word he used. And they go off, and I think they're in Catalonia. They're going off to Spain, coastal Spain, to have their little rendezvous and this is okay. So I don't want to just keep comparing it to Lenzi films, but I won't be able to help it. So first off, the location, the filming location, in terms of like the coast, I almost said coastal roads. That's kind of why I was being weird there. The location is identical. If it's not the exact same spots, it's at least the same greater area where they filmed A Quiet Place to Kill, and I think also Oasis of Fear when they're driving along. But whenever you see in these Lenzi Giallo films and they're kind of driving around these cliffside coast roads with the ocean on one side and then just like mountains on the other, cliffs, yeah, they're in Spain. At least I think they're always in Spain. There could be parts of other parts of Europe. So immediately that you're like, okay, this looks like A Quiet Place to Kill. And then like in that movie when Carol Baker shows up at the house with John Sorel, very similar looking properties. Totally different, but very similar at the same time. So they're just having their romance. We get a nice like 2-minute long Spider-Man kiss, which was really funny. I mean, it was funny just that it was happening. Like, oh wow, we're doing a Spider-Man kiss. And then it just kept going. I'm like, okay, we got like a 2-minute Spider-Man kiss. This is more Spider-Man kiss than Spider-Man was. So then they go off and they're like water skiing, which again was very reminiscent of So Sweet, So Perverse when Jean-Louis Trintignant is water skiing. It's even some of the same shots. And then they're scuba diving, and the scuba diving kind of reminded me of Martino's Case of the Scorpion's Tail. But again, that's just activities. It's not like it really was taking from that movie. This is stuff that a little wealthier people liked to do in these decades. But anyways, they're going off. They're just trying to enjoy themselves. And Ruth, she kind of has a bad feeling what's going on. I don't know if she's kind of tuned into like karma of the universe. Like, this probably isn't going to end well for me. But everything just seems to be going a little too well. And then things happen. She's like driving into town or she's driving along that road. And just like in a Lenzi Baker Giallo, all of a sudden the brakes don't work, and she has some few near misses, but she survives. They end up getting the car back, and it's like, yeah, your brake fluid is out. Like, oh, that's weird. It's just completely like they're just completely shit canned, and then they go diving, and John Sorel's character, what was his name? I'll just call him John Sorel, because it is John Sorel. John Sorel is playing a John Sorel character, and it's not bad, but it's just like this is clearly what you hired him for. Which, funny enough, when you see John Sorel in a Giallo, if he's not the main character, you got to be looking at him like there's a 90% chance you're probably going to be a bastard. There's 90% chance that you're probably going to be the danger, the trouble around here. So, not saying he is, but I'm just saying there's a high probability he is. And so he goes down scuba diving. Everything's fine. They're spearfishing. And then he has Ruth go down. All of a sudden, the tanks aren't really working once she's down low enough. She comes up, she's fine. John Sorel jumps in to kind of rescue her. And then there's this other woman that we've been seeing a little bit. And it's not like, oh, she is the neighbor, oh, she's the caretaker. It's kind of like, it's a little bit like Five Dolls for an August Moon with the one girl who's just kind of floating around the island. Except that girl is actually given a backstory in terms of she is, the daughter of these people, and like the hosts of the house of the island are looking after her while the parents are gone, or the parents die. Whatever, it's not important. But you at least get something for her. This other woman in this movie, she's just kind of there. And again, with something like that, you have to be like, I don't know you. I don't really trust you. And so Ruth comes up. She's rescued. And the butler, I guess I'll call him, he's looking over the tanks, and he's like, yeah, it's weird. Like, there's no air in them, but the pressure gauges show that it's full. And so Ruth is suspicious at first, thinking, oh my God, Did somebody try to kill me? And he kind of is just like, yeah, these things are death traps. That just, bad equipment. And like, this is not an uncommon thing. Okay. All right. So maybe it was just an accident, or it was just a coincidence. Well, and then another thing. So then John Sorel's character has this other friend show up, and he goes and he meets the guy, and he's really like, oh, what are you doing here? And he's really happy to see the guy. And Ruth is like, who's that? And he's like, don't worry about it. Okay. Then like there's a scene where they go to this club. It's like a discotheque, and the guy runs the place, I guess. And he just gives them the keys and tells them to enjoy themselves. And she's like, oh, he's the owner? He's like, no, I don't know. But I think he bought the place with like stolen money or something. Okay, man, you got some really suspicious friends. And there's like exposition where she's explaining how I used to hate this club because Michelle and I would go here when I was with Michelle, when like it was clear that like we were losing love in the relationship, and I didn't want to be alone, so I would come here, and there was always at least people to kind of be around and be distracted by. But getting off. Anyways, Michelle shows up all of a sudden, and so the movie is kind of floating the idea, at least Ruth is thinking it, that he must be doing all this because he's jealous. But the movie also does a good job of, it gives you enough red herrings that you can't ever be certain. And okay, so there's kind of different ways, like some Giallo movies and whodunits will make it so there's really not many people to suspect. It's like one person. It's like one person that the movie is really trying to pretend who it is, and then it's like some other person who's like, the boyfriend or whatever, and you're watching thinking, okay, well, they're trying to make me think it's this person, so it's probably that guy. And they don't really give you many options in terms of who else it could be besides who the movie's trying to make you think it is, and the other guy who's just there. And then there's other movies where they give you kind of a lot, like a real lot, or it's set up in a way where it really could be anybody. And they'll kind of pull one out of nowhere. You're like, oh, whoa, I didn't even think about that person. Now, of course, there's all these different ways to do it. It's not like there's just two or three ways or however, but this is kind of like a general thing. Like either it's like they didn't give you enough red herrings. It's you get to the end, and this is when I cover a movie, I'll say, well, of course it was him. Like, who the fuck else was it going to be? I talked about this in Maxine, where when the killer's revealed, and I'm like, duh, who else was it going to be? Just some random guy? Then there's some other movies where, again, they give you like so many people that it's impossible, really. Well, not impossible, but it's really difficult to kind of accurately pick who it could be. And then there's other ones where they give you a generous pool of people, just enough where, so in this movie, you're like, okay, it could be Michelle, it could be John Sorel, it could be John Sorel's friend, could be the butler, it could be the other woman. You're given just enough. And then also, because of these people and some of the relationships, you're like, or it could be these people working together, or this person could be working with this person. And when you do get to the end, or when it does start revealing itself, when it starts, showing you what's going on, it's not like, okay, I didn't suspect that person, because of course it's like, hey, well, it has to be one of these like 3 or 4 or 5 people. It's just, but is that who you thought it was? And that's where it gets kind of like, that's what gets difficult with these types of narratives in Giallo, is you always got to suspect like everybody, like at least like 10%, 20%. And it's really hard to just be like, okay, I'm going to take a shot. It's that guy. It's that guy. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think it's that guy working with that girl, or it's that guy working with that guy. And so when it is revealed and it's actually like that guy working with this girl, you're like, okay, well, I was close, but it's like, well, yeah. Cause like, anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, Giallo movies like this, I don't know where I'm ultimately going with this, but there are a lot of these movies where it's got to be one of like these few people, 3 or 4 people, and it's those are a little bit probably the most difficult to actually just hedge your bets and say, okay, I'm going with this person, because the movie just does a good job of being like, but it could be them, Whereas when it's a bigger, like a huge pool of people, you can kind of just go, okay, I'm just gonna say it's this person. Like the separate people are kind of disparate. Like they're not really so close. Like in this movie, again, like I said, it's her ex-husband, her new lover, her lover's friend, and this other woman who is undoubtedly tied with somebody, either the friend or her lover, or she's just not there for no reason. So it's much more difficult to decide who it is, because you're like, is it all of them? But anyways, this is pretty good. If this was a Lenzi giallo, ooh. The thing is, it's kind of derivative of a few. So it's hard for me to say like, oh, it's better than this one and that one, because it kind of starts out like Orgasmo a little bit, but you got to throw in the infidelity. That's one thing Orgasmo didn't really have in that part. Kind of starts out a little like Orgasmo, but not too much. But as it gets going, about more than halfway through, all of a sudden it kind of becomes A Quiet Place to Kill mixed with Orgasmo. So, or I guess, A Quiet Place to Kill does have this thing, but it doesn't really reveal it until like the end. But the dynamic in Orgasmo with the 2 people terrorizing the one person, spoiler, I won't say who, but that comes up. I mean, I guess if you can look at the poster, I guess you can probably guess who one of them is, and then based off of the description I've given you so far, you can probably guess who the other person is. And then that means you might be able to guess who the person is that dies. But it becomes this sort of, what would you call this? Like erotic blackmail, just like in Orgasmo. And like I said, it kind of goes to a little bit like A Quiet Place to Kill. But the ending, the ending is, I guess, if I'm comparing it to Lenzi films, is a little similar to Oasis of Fear, kind of. Not really. I'll also say this: Lenzi's films end with an accident. They always end with like a car accident, like Orgasmo. Again, spoiler if you haven't seen this, but I'm assuming you've probably seen Umberto Lenzi's, late 60s, early 70s giallo films. But Orgasmo ends with a car accident. A Quiet Place to Kill ends with a car accident. Well, it doesn't end with it, but a car accident happens, like, and then the denouement of the movie happens, and it ends. Oasis of Fear ends with a car accident. This movie doesn't end with a car accident, but it does end with some comeuppance. I'll wrap this up for you, but it's good. It's a very good movie. It doesn't feel like a Spanish giallo. I mean, I can't really say that. I've only seen a couple Spanish giallo films as of now, but it just, like I said, it just feels like a Lenzi film. It feels like a Lenzi Baker collaboration film, and I could totally see, one of the women being played by Carol Baker, but glad it's not. I'm not really too familiar with the other actresses in this movie, but I think Carol Baker's just in a lot of stuff, and Carol Baker and John Sorel have already been in some stuff together, so I don't need to, they're already in A Quiet Place to Kill, so I don't need to see another mashing of them. But yes, I would say check this out. It's not essential. Like I would say if you're really going through giallo films, you should see Lenzi's films. They're not like the top priority, but they're still in that, well, let's call them, I guess, A tier of giallo films. But like the best, like undoubtedly you have to see, I'll say, are the S tier, but the A tier would be, anything Argento, Bava, Fulci, Martino, and Lenzi, and then some other ones. But those directors, their films basically are kind of in that, and then if they have some ones that are duds, they'll fall just below it. in like a B tier or so. But because those directors are so important to the genre, they're basically like the Mount Rushmore, the heads of Mount Rushmore of the genre. Even the bad films, it's like, well, check it out. Like I talk about this a lot, that I love Argento, but I feel like I'm one of the only people who is like criticizing Argento, because he made a lot of movies that were not that good. And I feel like a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Everything is great. I'm not a fan of Do You Like Hitchcock? I'm not a fan of The Card Player. The Card Player is similar to an American movie called Untraceable, and I think Untraceable is a way better movie. They're different, but they're also very similar. But yeah, I think, again, and this is not to say I don't like Argento. I love Argento. The background on my phone for the last like 7-8 years has been Suspiria, but I think he also just kind of got a little weird and lost his way and just lost, like, maybe I don't know what it is, but even some of his good films like Opera, I'm like, yeah, I don't really love Opera. Let's say I love Tenebrae. And then going into like the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, his movies become his Giallo films specifically become pretty hit and miss. I do like Trauma. I like the Stendhal Syndrome fine. I really like Sleepless. And then once you get into the 2000s, it's kind of like, I'm not a fan. But that's just me. But I'm saying all that to say that this movie, I wouldn't say it's like A tier in terms of like, you got to check it out. Like Fifth Chord by Luigi Bazzoni. Even though Luigi Bazzoni only made like 3 Giallo films. Yeah, no, Luigi Bazzoni is an A tier of Giallo film directors. And a lot of his films, I would say, are S tier. Like, absolutely see it. But in terms of this director being someone who's like, yeah, I'll throw him in the A tier, I don't think so. And I tried to look and see if he made any other Giallo films, and I couldn't see anything. But I'm also looking at titles that are unfamiliar to me, and I'm kind of scoping through them, and nothing is saying, this Spanish Giallo, this But check this out if you like Giallo films. It's undoubtedly a Giallo. There's a lot. There's the music there's psychedelic colored lights, especially in the club scene. There's good. There's crash zooms. There's some really good use of camera and editing. Like one part when Michel shows up and Jean Sorel and his friend are kind of like passing a pistol to each other and shooting targets. Michel starts asking him, like, where did you learn to do this? Oh, in the circus. And he's just like, oh yeah, so you any good? Can you actually hit a target or whatever? And he holds up a magazine of a woman, and he holds it up and he's like, tells him to shoot it. And Jean Sorel is like going, and the camera keeps panning back and forth between Michel and the magazine, and it's like, and it starts going really fast, and it was like unintentionally funny, but he shoots, and then it's like bullet hole. I think this is how it happened. It was like the magazine with the bullet hole, and then it went through it, and you saw Ruth sitting there like, oh, stuff like that. You're like, that's the type of shit we want to see in Giallo films, that like, something where you could tell that the director, the cinematographer actually really thought about how they wanted to do this thing. And that's something I've been kind of missing in these other Giallo, pseudo Giallo films I've been watching recently. I haven't seen any just like, ooh, that was good type camera stuff. And so when I was watching this, it was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is what it's like when people talk about Giallo style. This movie has it. So yes, check it out. How good is it? Well, like I said, I don't think I like it more than Orgasmo. I don't think I like it more than A Quiet Place to Kill. That doesn't mean that it is worse, or it doesn't mean that those films are undoubtedly better. You might like this movie better than them. I know I saw some people saying that one person said that they preferred this to Orgasmo because of the location. And I'm like, okay, well, it's also kind of A Quiet Place to Kill, but I'm not disagreeing. But yes, good movie. Glad I got it. Check it out. Also, it's kind of hard for me to rank it with Lenzi's films as of now, because I've only seen the movie once, whereas those other films I've seen like, easily 3-4 times each. But yeah, I don't want to say it again, but this movie. It's like the Lenzi film he didn't make. Okay, fine. All right, that's all I'm going to say about this. And hey, if you made it to the end, thank you for watching this whole thing. Let me know your thoughts if you've seen it. What do you think about the movie? If you haven't seen it, are you curious to watch it? Have you heard of this movie? Like I said, I hadn't heard about it until like a couple months ago. So thank you there. But yeah, let's just finish this up. Let's wrap it up. I don't think I've got anything else to say. Wait a minute, hold on. There is something I did want to mention. There's something I forgot about. The title of this movie. It's not that it doesn't make any sense, although, but I am just curious why they decided. I mean, there's two titles for this movie: The Fox with a Velvet Tail and In the Eye of the Hurricane. Neither is truly fitting. And I'm curious why Swan it doesn't fit somewhere in the title, because there's a lot of swan imagery, like artistic, like pieces of art, as well as an actual swan. And there's a part, I forgot to mention this, where John Sorel is kind of harassing a swan. It's like he's coming after it with one of those nets he used to clean a pool, and so he'll like kind of be like prodding at it, and it like is treading water across a pool, and it goes to the other side and gets out, and he comes around and keeps doing it, and it goes back in. So it's kind of saying a lot about him, especially that he's harassing and tormenting this innocent, beautiful, delicate creature. So I wonder why Swan didn't fit somewhere into the title, because you'd still have the animal aspect, and they could have used a color. There's a lot of black-white swan imagery. I don't know. But Fox with a Velvet Tail, sure. In the Eye of the Hurricane, even also more so, kind of like, okay. Thank you. Well, hey, thanks again. And this is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Hey!